Hello, hello, welcome. Welcome, everyone. Just going to give it a few moments while people uh, log in. Thank you for coming. Just going to start in just a moment for those who are just joining us. Okay, well, it looks like attendance is kind of leveling off, so I think we can get started. Welcome to New Tools to Create Dynamic Collections Resources for Your Organization. My name is Greg Stewart. I'm the Education Program Manager at the Conservation Center for Art and Historic Artifacts, or CCAHA, and I use they and he pronouns. For accessibility's sake, I will say I'm a white person with glasses and headphones and a purple shirt with an undershirt, black undershirt, and I am in a room and my screen is blurred. Just a bit more about today's webinar. Spreadsheets are an intro Spreadsheets as internal resources are commonplace at many institutions. Although they can be incredible tools for information tracking, they can also be a major headache. Multiple copies across many computers increase the risk of information loss and undermines shared institutional knowledge. Customization often damages navigability and ease of use, and others find that the lack of updated features in commonly used software limits their full potential. Over the last few years, however, new cloud-based tools have emerged that allow organizations to create more dynamic resources that can maximize both content and navigability. Using CCAHA resources such as the Preservation Glossary and Vendor Database, which we'll be sharing with you as case studies, this webinar will cover the process that went into updating existing spreadsheets and turning them into living databases that can be regularly updated with ease, enabling improved internal workflows and external products with a specific perspective focused on collections care and resources within the field. So during this presentation, Preservation Services Coordinator Camilla Dawson will provide a look at some of these newer tools and programs such as Notion. She'll take a deeper dive into how you can transition from static spreadsheets to these newer, more user-friendly programs, providing your content with greater search functionality, taxonomical structures, and more. And just to note, while this presentation is outlining several tools that you can use to build resources at your organization, this webinar does not serve as an endorsement for any specific product. So before we get to Camilla's presentation, just some Zoom housekeeping. You are in Zoom webinar, so your video and audio are turned off, but you can ask questions or make comments to us in the chat. This program is auto closed captioned in English, and you can turn on subtitles with the little CC button in the Zoom toolbar. So we're going to have a presentation from our speaker, followed by Q&A with you. And please feel free to ask questions anytime during the program. I'll be reading them verbally to Camilla at the end. And this program is being recorded, and we'll share the recording as well as the PowerPoint and any other resources in a follow-up email. And this program is generously supported by the National Endowment for the Humanities. Camilla, if you could go to the next slide. And just one quick note about the organization we work for, CCAHA. We're a regional conservation lab and preservation services facility. We're based in Philadelphia, but we work with organizations and clients all across the country. Our conservators treat paper-based objects like books, photographs, documents, artwork on paper, and more. And our preservation services staff work in the field, providing education programs like this one and helping institutions plan for the future of their collections. The center also offers a wide range of digitization services, as well as fundraising assistance, housing, framing, and more. And you can learn more about what we do at our website, ccha.org. So just a bit more about our speaker today. As Preservation Services Coordinator, Camilla Dawson is responsible for providing administrative support and project management for the Preservation Services Department. She handles the registration, promotion, and materials for CCHA's workshops and education programs, and assists with the expansive capacity for preservation assessment work. In her previous role at the Barnes Foundation, Camilla presented talks to visitors about the Barnes' history and collections. She has additionally held front-facing roles at cultural institutions such as Philadelphia's Magic Gardens, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles. Camilla holds an MA in Cinema and Media Studies from the University of California at Los Angeles and earned a BA in Film and Media Arts from Temple University. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Camilla.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. As Greg mentioned, my name is Camilla Dawson, and I'm the Preservation Services Coordinator in CCAHA's Preservation Services Department. For the sake of visual description, I'm a woman with black hair. I'm wearing a black top, and my background is blurred. So today's presentation is called New Tools to Create Dynamic Resources for Your Organization. And a big part of what we do in the Preservation Services Department at CCAHA is to produce a variety of resources, particularly ones that small to mid-sized museums can use to bolster their preservation knowledge and skills. So as I've outlined in this slide, the resources we develop and produce vary in type from typically printed and static resources such as technical bulletins, reports, and guides to more dynamic resources such as infographics and webinars. Across the board, these resources contain information that regularly changes, from pricing that shifts all the time to guidance that can change based on research. As we've developed these resources, we've hoped for new ways to produce them in a way that can easily adapt to change. Today, I'm going to be diving into some tools that have allowed us to create more dynamic resources that serve as living, changing documents and allow for greater ease of use by our users. So backing up somewhat, finding these tools came out of a search for a project management software that could meet the needs of the variety of projects that our department works on. In addition to the traditional assessments and surveys our preservation specialists work on throughout the year, we also take on a number of complex and bespoke projects for clients, in addition to regularly developing new services to meet the varying needs of institutions throughout the country. When I started at the center nearly 4 years ago, we were using a software that just didn't quite meet the current needs of the department. Alongside my colleague, Alana Schaefer, we began to look for a new project management software that could not only help us track projects and tasks, but record institutional data and structures. Oops, got a little ahead of myself there. So we were faced with a landscape of options when looking for a new cloud-based project management system. Over the course of a few months, Alana and I test drove a few cloud-based software options, which I've listed here. Some of these software options we eliminated pretty quickly as they struggled to portray complex projects. Others had some really good functionalities, which we have found other uses in. For example, we regularly use Miro for brainstorming new process structures and different idea dumps, but we found it wasn't a good overall system for project tracking. Ultimately, we narrowed down our search to two options. The first option was Airtable. Airtable advertises itself as a hybrid between a database and a spreadsheet. So it has the functionality of a database, but in the structure of a spreadsheet like you would see in Microsoft Excel. Airtable is highly customizable, and you can build out these databases to be linked to one another in a workspace that is shared with your colleagues. One thing that we really liked about Airtable is its ability to create a cohesive dashboard of analytics easily from the data that is entered. Our other option, Notion, works in a very similar way. There are, again, databases that have the structure of spreadsheets. Notion is rooted in its past as a note-taking app, and I think the background lends itself to our work in a way that we really appreciate. Not only does it have living databases in the same way that Airtable does, it also has great functionality to build out our organization's institutional knowledge. We are able to document workflows, maintain a database of photographs, record notes for our department meetings, and more. Customization is really at the heart of Notion, and this ability to easily create custom databases made it easy to portray our work and tasks in a way where other project management software struggled. Ultimately, we went with Notion, and my colleague Alana did some really incredible work building out task structures for projects and a project archive. We found it easy to begin building in Notion. You begin with a blank page, but can immediately insert a database, a form, a board, a list, a gallery, and more structures. You can also import existing files. So next, I want to touch on some of the internal uses we found for Notion. Through Notion, we are not only able to track project progress and track incoming project leads, but we're able to look back at projects spanning over a decade. Easy to use filters on Notion allow us to look at specific views of past projects, such as all the webinars that we presented in a year, all the planning and assessment projects we've done in certain regions, and the time we've spent on specific types of projects and tasks over the year. I'll begin diving into some case studies on some public resources we've created through Notion in a second. But again, I wanted to highlight that Notion also makes it really easy to create internal resources that we can use across our organization. Through Notion, we have a living cache of resources that we can include in reports to clients. Each resource in this database is tagged so they can be narrowed down in terms of knowledge level, topic, and type of report, to name a few. This database is also easy to add to, so we can keep track of new guidance and research across the field. We regularly monitor it to make sure that links are still active, and we mark resources that are out of date or have updated versions. Lastly, one key aspect of Notion for our work is automating processes. Simplifying any sort of process gives us additional time to focus on preservation work. And Notion makes it really easy to, even when the process spans multiple platforms, such as adding a calendar event in Outlook or submitting an expense report. So the first case study that I wanted to dive into is our vendor database. This was an existing resource that we transformed using Notion. It was initially launched as a public resource in March of 2021 as part of the Diversity in Collections Care Many Voices Colloquium and served to raise awareness, access, and support for businesses relevant to the preservation and conservation sectors that are BIPOC, LGBTQ, and women owned, as well as ones that offer sustainable products. When we first started building our Notion workspace, we recognized that it would be a great place for resources like the vendors database to live. As vendor information is ever changing, places close, merge, and expand their services. The vendor list in Notion would allow us to make quick changes like editing and adding vendors without us having to upload a new copy and hope that users find the new information. Users can instead bookmark this page and come back to it. Upon beginning to build the vendors list in Notion, I recognized that it would be a good opportunity to merge many separate vendor lists that had been floating around the center. Combining these lists would allow us to have one list that covers all the different services outside our scope that we're asked about. I also use this moment to crowdsource any additional recommendations from staff, places regularly recommended to clients that weren't formally written down, and places that we've collaborated with on projects in the past. Upon building the database in Notion, I wanted to keep the classifications from the original list indicating BIPOC, LGBTQ, and women-owned/operated businesses to not lose the intention of the original list. In addition to those tags, I wanted to classify all the vendors within specific categories to make it easy for users to filter what they were looking for. For example, if they're looking for mold remediation vendors, they can find that quickly. Additionally, I added in a category for location so people can filter and see vendors from their state. So looking at this screenshot of the vendor database, I wanted to speak about the practical aspects that go into building a database using Notion. Notion and similar software like Airtable make it easy to build these databases from scratch. You start with a blank page, add a database structure that can either draw from existing information within your workspace or contain new information. Visually, these databases look similar to an Excel spreadsheet. However, on Notion, you can click on an entry to read more information. Additionally, you can add a header, as you can see here, which can provide additional information, including linking out to other pages in Notion or external links. A really crucial element of Notion to me is the ability to have different views, which each live in different panes atop of the page. You can add these views onto the page by using different features such as sort, filter, and group, and then save that view for all users. So right where my cursor is, there's these different views, and you just have to click on them to see their description at the top, just see that list, and it'll be organized in all different ways. So looking at this specific list, you can first view all entries under all vendors. And then in the second view, you can see the entries grouped by each service type. So you'll see mold remediation service providers grouped together, office supply companies grouped together. Following that, there's a pane for digitization vendors. This represents one of the previous lists we had at CCAHA. After that, emergency response vendors, so people can quickly find what they need. The vendor list, as I mentioned earlier, was created to highlight BIPOC, LGBTQ+, and women-owned businesses. The Inclusive Vendors tab contains the original vendors from that list to ensure the purpose of that list is not lost. Lastly, as I mentioned, there's tags for vendors from each state. And in the last view, where you see one more, you can find that list organized by state. Even with these views, users navigating the vendor list are able to filter, sort, and search throughout the list to find what they're looking for. Before moving on to the next case study, I wanted to talk about Notion's marketplace of templates. Both Notion and third-party vendors offer a variety of templates, over 30,000, for all types of functionalities and processes. While there are many paid templates, there are plenty of free templates to use throughout the marketplace. These templates can be an amazing starting point, particularly if you have an existing structure in mind, such as a constituent database, a social media analytics page, or a timesheet database, to name some examples. Here you can see a few screenshots from the Notion templates marketplace. When you search for a glossary template, for example, there's over 100 results. For the next case study, I'll delve into how a specific glossary template helped lay the foundation for one of our most popular resources. So I've included, this is kind of the landing page for templates on Notion. As you see, when you search for glossary, there's over 100 templates. And then this is the specific glossary template that I used in the case study that's going to follow. So the preservation glossary also started as a static resource. Developed through a collaboration with Archives for Black Lives in Philadelphia, the glossary existed as a designed PDF containing frequently asked about preservation terms. A few years later, we received additional funding from the National Endowment for the Humanities to build out the glossary. Going into this project, the project team wanted this glossary to remain accessible to all audiences, but also exist as a living database that could be regularly updated to reflect up-to-date guidance, images, and research. We also recognized that with additional funding, we could expand the glossary to reflect a breadth of subject matters within the preservation and conservation fields. Before the glossary was built in Notion, the project team worked in an Excel spreadsheet to enter definitions and make comments on terms. This allowed for cross-department collaboration and for the project team to consider structure and taxonomy in advance. So this is a screenshot from that Excel spreadsheet. You see that there is a term listed here. The definition was worked on here. You see there's a little kind of gray marking in the corner that kind of just shows all the comments that were made on the definition as we work to achieve the best possible definition for our audience. There's related terms that, when it goes into Notion, are linked and connected to the definition and the word. There's a cover image that was determined to best represent the term. There's an image credit, and then there were tags that were created to go along with each term. The team that worked on this glossary was comprised of a number of subject matter experts, two conservators for conservation terms, a preservation specialist for preservation terms, a digital archive specialist for digitization terms, and additionally, our postgraduate fellow to assist with defining additional terms and finding images. Additionally, we contracted a technical writer to make sure that the terms were easy to understand by all audiences. After members of the project team drafted definitions, our contract writer, Lori, would work with them to simplify the definitions and make sure the language remained at an accessible reading level. Crucially, taxonomy and structure were considered from the beginning. With databases like these, it is easy for the list of tags to spiral out of control so that the tags are no longer useful. A tight list of tags was created from the jump, and each term was given a tag before entering the Notion database. By 2024, our department was working fully in Notion, so we identified it as a perfect fit for building this project. After the project team did its work defining terms, I was brought in to begin moving the definitions into Notion. I looked through glossary templates in the marketplace and found one with a structure that made the most sense for what we were hoping to accomplish. This template set the initial structure, which we were able to adjust and add to. For instance, we added in our tagging structure. Once all the terms were in place, we also considered different views for the glossary. Since there are many images for terms, there's a gallery view, which shows the terms with more prominent thumbnails. We also frequently get questions about terms, or we define terms for clients in our planning and assessment reports. So we added a view for terms that are frequently used in those reports that we can send to clients. So I created this quick video just to show what it's like looking up a term. This is the same term that I showed in the Excel spreadsheet. And when you search for backing, it's pretty easy to find it. And then when you open it up into the larger view, you get the definition, the tags, related terms, and then a series of images if applicable. All of the images have a credit that links out to the person that created it. And then you see this related terms section, and you see tags that categorize all these terms further. You can click on any of the related terms to go to their page and see the definition. And then you can just click the back button to get back to the original term that you were looking at. We also wanted to create a page to kind of show users who are new to this sort of structure how to use the glossary. It outlines all the different views they can see, and how they can organize the glossary to work best for them. We also wanted to make sure, again, that this is a living resource. So we have a form that users can submit if they want to see additional terms that are in the glossary, if they're having just general errors with the glossary. That's something that we can easily go in and troubleshoot and fix. Oops. One last resource I wanted to talk about. This is a resource that my colleague Maddie Cooper created in Notion that is more similar to the format of a design PDF rather than the database examples I've shown in this presentation. Assessing the preservation needs of paper-based collections is a resource that came out of a grant-funded project called the Preservation Services in Puerto Rico initiative. This was a 2-year project that was a collaboration between CCAHA and Sencor in Puerto Rico. This initiative was created to build capacity for the preservation of documentary collections in Puerto Rico. This toolkit provides a process to users to identify risks in cultural heritage collections and create a long-term preservation plan. By building this toolkit in Notion, Maddie was able to create a web page that is able to be read in English and Spanish through the simple push of a button. So where you see this button here, you click on it and then you'll see the Spanish language version. It was easy to organize modules that live within the page as well. Similar to this toolkit, we have also created pages in Notion for previous courses that CCAHA has held, and we now offer them to our members as a membership benefit. So I just wanted to touch on some last conclusions for this presentation. Notion and similar tools have been transformative for our resource creation over the last few years. Previously, we mainly relied on designed PDFs and Excel spreadsheets to provide the most up-to-date information to clients. With Notion databases, we can create living resources that can reflect more current research without having to save multiple versions of files, risking information loss. If you're considering beginning to build resources in similar software, I encourage you to think about structure and taxonomy from the start. Planning these things out in advance has been really productive and helpful for our projects. One issue in particular with previous spreadsheet formats that we've used is that they don't necessarily lend themselves to being particularly aesthetically pleasing. Additionally, trying to add design elements can impact structure and usability. With Notion, design is more at the forefront and it's much easier to insert things like images and icons. Although this isn't the main focus of any resource, it can assist with usability. Lastly, if your organization is a nonprofit, many of these software, like Notion and also Canva, the design software, offer discounted and sometimes free plans. Notion specifically offers 50% off plans for nonprofits. This is a huge bonus to add a software that can add much greater productivity to your team. So I just wanted to highlight the resources that I talked about in this presentation, CCAHA's vendor list, the preservation glossary, assessing the preservation needs of paper-based collections, and then lastly, the template marketplace in Notion. For all the CCAHA resources, Greg has dropped them in the chat as well. You'll also be getting these slides after the presentation in an email along with the recording, so you can click on these links. So now I just wanted to open it up to questions, see if there's anything that I can delve deeper into in regard to these projects that we've worked on and the software that we've used. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Camilla. That was so helpful and informative, and it's been amazing to see how these resources have really come together over the past couple of years. So, yeah, so yes, we'll happily take questions now if anybody has them. Um, I'm just curious if people want to respond in the chat too, if you have projects that you're thinking of that might be good for a tool like this. So I'm already seeing a question here. We have what has been the biggest challenge in implementing these tools?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think kind of getting over the initial hump of getting to know these tools. When we started in Notion, I think there was a lot of trial and error to build these databases and see how the structure functioned the best for everyone. I know even within our internal resources, there were a lot of trial and error. I think especially when we're kind of implementing more complex processes, such as rollovers and things to that effect, we did a lot of kind of working through that. I think also thinking about the overall structure of our workspace, a lot of things are very interconnected. Pages link out to other pages, and if one thing gets broken, it's easy for that structure to collapse. So again, as I mentioned, it's really kind of important to think about the structure of your workspace that you're building and the database so that kind of things all work in a fluid way together.
Thank you. Our next question is, could you speak a bit more about why you chose Notion over Airtable?
Yeah. as I mentioned, Airtable was something that we looked really closely at. And we actually still use it for a big part of our organization. Our lab uses it to track kind of all their projects. Notion, I think specifically, we really liked kind of the note-taking aspect that it had kind of grown out of. We also, I think, would kind of struggle a bit more to build some of these resources in Airtable. There's a little bit more flexibility and customization in Notion compared to Airtable, in my opinion. So I think the fact that you could kind of start from a really blank page and really customized to a great extent is kind of why we chose it over Airtable. But I think there's a lot of benefits in Airtable as well. I think just when we wanted to not just portray complex projects and track projects, but also saw the benefit of building these resources, we saw it as kind of an additional bonus that took it over the edge.
Next question. For Notion, what type of support do they offer? Is it just chat or crowdsourced, paid for, or just purchased without support? Yeah, purchased without support.
Yeah, that's a really great question as well. They offer support. You can send them a message, kind of in the same way that you would encounter on a lot of websites nowadays. They also, something that I noticed when I was looking up the payment structures is that they, for nonprofit organizations, they offer a number of certain hours of consulting. So they have people on staff that can help you consult with the structures you're trying to build. I think they offer maybe around 4 hours of that consulting work for free. So that's definitely something that's a really big bonus if you're coming from a nonprofit organization. Um, I need to look more specifically into the structures of all their support, but I know that they offer pretty rigorous and pretty reliable support across the board. We haven't actually needed to kind of lean on that much, but I know every organization is different. They also, when you go to the template marketplace as well, they have people that you can talk to as well, who are specific subject matter experts and building specific structures that you can speak with, that are sometimes from Notion and then also kind of third party people who are just kind of experts on Notion. Um, Semi-related, when we were starting to build out everything in Notion as well, we found it really helpful to look at tutorials on YouTube. There's a lot of people that have channels dedicated to showing off different processes and building different types of structures in Notion and Airtable and similar programs. So it was really helpful to see what other people were working on, things that they were able to find in Notion's features to build many of the databases that we have and we use every day in Notion. So that's another good place of support and where you can find a lot more information about using Notion.
Thank you, Camilla. Any other questions out there? Anything folks are still curious about with Notion or any of our projects that we've outlined here? And if not, that is totally okay too. Um, yeah, this was really great. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Camilla, for this amazing presentation. Thanks to the National Endowment for Humanities for supporting this webinar. I'm also just going to drop a link in the chat to our next webinar, which will be on Philadelphia's Rowing History Project, a case study in digitization, digitizing collections. Um, so I'm just going to put that in the chat. That'll be on September 24th at noon ET, and we hope to see you there. And when the program ends today, there's going to be a little survey that pops up that we'd ask you to fill out if you want to tell us how we're doing. And we hope to see you at a future webinar. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.